All right, I think we're going, guys.
Okay.
Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody, thanks for tuning in. I'm Dan. I'm here with my good friend Matilda and the mysterious Dr. Lee. You just wave to everybody. And it is
He's mirror gazing.
he's mirror gazing. There you go. And if I look like Lee, I gaze into a mirror as much as possible. It is April 14th, the day before taxes are due. Well, no, we have a few days before taxes are due.
Yeah.
And
Monday.
2023. Monday, Tuesday, actually. It gets till Tuesday.
Oh, Tuesday?
Yeah.
How come?
I don't know. I think it's always on a Tuesday.
I don't know.
No, it's always on the 15th, but whatever. If anybody has that answer why it's due on Tuesday instead of Monday, go ahead and put us in the chat. Okay, we've got 9 people. Hello, Diane. Pretty, you know her?
No,
Okay.
no.
Hey, Diane. Hello. How are you?
Hi, Diane.
All right. Sorry, we were scrambling, a little frazzled here at the moment, and we're here at the Merchant's House. We are in the front parlor. Now, if you look over on this side of the screen, we have a beautiful fireplace. We have a nice picture of Seabury and Eliza Treadwell. And on the other side of that wall is where they're planning to put a gigantic hotel, a gigantic 8 or 9-story hotel by these evil developers who just want to make some cash and they don't care about the Merchant's House here. So if they do the construction next door, everything in this room will just crumble. It'll be a catastrophe for the Merchant's House. And the Merchant's House is just a jewel of New York City. It's a time capsule. And if you haven't been here, you have to come here and witness this stuff for yourself. I mean, Lee, the cameraman, Lee, would you want to maybe turn us around and we can, and look how beautiful this is. We don't want to ruin this. So come down to the Merchant's House. Give the house a visit, spend your hard-earned money, all the money that is collected here at the Merchant's House and generated here at the Merchant's House, all stays with the Merchant's House. Nobody here is getting paid. I'm gonna move this way a little bit. There you go. We're a little out of focus, but it'll probably come back.
Shall I move it back a little bit?
Yeah, try that. Sorry, guys.
I think Mercury's almost going into
It's been an intense 15 minutes.
for all of the technical issues.
All right. You know what? Monday is a holiday in some states, Patriots Day. So the post offices are not open to mail returns. Thank you, Heather. Heather Massey, anybody?
No.
Thanks, Heather.
Hi, Heather.
And hey, Matilda, why don't you talk about what we're going to do? And I'm going to see if I can't get this camera to focus in.
Sure. So we are going to talk tonight about NDEs and SDEs, near-death experiences, and an emerging field related to that called shared death experiences. I think most people know what a near-death experience is. It's a situation where someone is either medically declared dead and then revived, or on the brink of death and then brought back. And there are commonalities of experiences that people relate when they come back. Things like seeing a great white light, traveling through a tunnel. A big one is engaging in a life review or seeing their life flash before their eyes. Many people report feelings of great peace and love. Some people actually report quite terrifying experiences. So that's a near-death experience. A shared death experience is when a living person experiences a near-death experience at the same time as someone is dying. So for instance, I, as a living person, might all of a sudden feel as though I was traveling through a tunnel or some phenomenon like that, and later find out that someone close to me or someone that I knew died at that moment. So that's what we're going to talk about. And I know Lee's going to probably have some insights into current research and data around both of them, right, Lee?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And you know, near NDE, near death experience, that is one of the things that is studied in parapsychology. Parapsychology being the study of just 3 things, with each category, each of the 3 categories being an umbrella with lots of things falling under it. The sexy part of parapsychology is survivalism.
Mm.
And that's where the near-death experience and shared death experience would come into play. But near-death experience, I mean, that phrase was coined in 1975 by Raymond Moody,
Yes, Raymond Moody.
and which is a great name for a guy who's
Yeah.
studying near-death experience. His name is Moody. But I was reading a little bit about him and reading a little bit about this guy, Dr. Grayson, who I didn't know. He's
Bruce
been doing,
Grayson.
yeah, he's been doing a lot of research in this now, and I didn't know that he was a professor at University of Virginia.
Yes, he's at the head of DOPS, I think, which is
Right.
the Division of Perceptual Studies
Right,
at
right.
the University of Virginia, which was started by Dr. Ian Stevenson,
Who
did
did
a lot of research into child reincarnation.
right, and then the guy I think that is continuing his work. I think his last name might be Green. I forget. I spoke with him on the phone once because a friend of mine, his son woke up one morning and could speak Russian
Oh my God.
and understand Russian.
Wow.
And my friend had just started dating a girl from Russia. And they got along. There was no drama or anything like that. But Yoshi, who's Japanese, woke up and was speaking
Wow.
Russian. And it
What
turned
did
out
they make of that?
they weren't sure, but this guy, Ian Stevenson's kind of protege, really was interested in
Mhm.
interviewing him and doing some research. And I think Yoshi was a little bugged out by that.
Mhm.
And he was in high school.
Yeah,
They didn't
yeah.
know
Well,
that.
I would be a little freaked out if
Yeah.
I woke up and could speak fluently in a language I'd
But
never.
it was old Russian, like he sang a song and they played it for somebody for Larry's girlfriend.
Uh-huh.
And she said, that is like if somebody sang the original verses of the Star Spangled Banner.
Wow.
She goes, that's like an original. Nobody knows that. Like
Wow.
nobody, certainly not some little Japanese kid living in the East Village.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean that guy was interesting. I gotta look up his name now.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean we'll have a show on reincarnation because I was fascinated by that.
It's fascinating. And it is also very well researched and ongoing. There's a great video. It's on YouTube. It's called The Boy Who Fell Through the Earth. And Bruce Grayson it's an investigation that he did on a child in Scotland who kept describing previous family, the town where he grew up. And Bruce Grayson went to Scotland and they took him to the town and he knew his way around the town. And, I mean, there's nothing conclusive, but I
Yeah,
want
but
to
there
say.
are at least like 2 or 3 stories that are so in depth like that, where like there's so many things that the child describes that like
Mhm.
it's basically impossible that they would have known it even with the internet. Like it's hard to find these records and stuff, and then they end up being true. They're fully verified.
Right.
There's 2 or 3 cases that are just extraordinary. It's just like, wow, it's they're incredible to read about. And
Mhm.
they describe some of them, I think. Well, yeah, there's a lot of you'll find them on the internet. There's one with a kid that his former life supposedly was as like a pilot.
Yeah, James
in Japan
Hennigan.
Yeah.
World War II or
Yes,
something.
that's
yeah.
a very thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Bruce Grayson was involved in
Yeah.
that too.
And then there's another kid that was like a TV producer in Hollywood or something. That's also a really well-known
Yep.
in-depth case.
Yep. And they went to his house and met his daughter.
Crazy. Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
and his sister, who was super old at the time, was like, it's as if I was talking to my brother that had passed away or
Mhm.
whatever. Yeah, really,
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that little boy who thought he was a pilot,
They took him to Japan. He brought him exactly to where the
Yeah,
crash
he
site
bugged
was,
out.
and they verified it. He started crying.
very
So-
emotional. And then he also spoke with the pilot who died's sister, who's an older
Yes.
woman.
Uh-huh.
And the little boy asked this old woman, "Hey, do you still have that painting Mom did of us?"
Yeah.
And she said, "Yeah, I haven't looked at that thing in probably 60 years. It's in the
Yeah.
attic." And she
Yeah.
sent it to him, and
Yeah.
she signed it on the back to my brother.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll get to this stuff
Yeah.
in another
Yeah.
episode.
Fascinating
That'll
stuff.
be
You're gonna have to
another
wait
show.
for another show.
Yeah.
But near-death experiences, I guess we should also ask, Lee, anything close to that, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's similar stuff that can,
No, that's happened to you.
Oh, to me? No, personally, no. But yeah, there are similar stories that we'll get into that can be verified to some extent in the same ways as those we just described.
Well, they're also doing some experiments, like they have put a series of numbers
Yeah.
in light
That's
fixtures in
Dr.
emergency rooms, because
Yeah.
people report leaving their body and floating up to the ceiling and looking down.
Exactly. That's Dr. Parnia. And he actually started a study that was the collaboration between several extremely well-known hospitals, like, in Boston.
Mhm.
I don't remember the names, but like very, very prestigious hospitals, because he had worked there as like a cardiologist. And they set up teams in each of these hospitals where they were specially trained to participate in the study. They would take people that had had like a cardiac arrest or a heart attack, and they would bring them to special rooms where they had special ways to treat them, and bring them to a special room where there were supposed to be cameras and stuff. But also, like you said, sorry, I don't know if there were cameras, but there were those special displays with random numbers being generated pointing up at the ceiling.
Yeah,
So unfortunately, they did like 2 phases of that study over many years. And as far as I know, I think the most recent phase might have just ended just last year or something, pretty recently.
Yeah.
But as far as I know, because NDEs are pretty rare, and to have them happen in the hospital, and at the time when this team was available and all that stuff, put all this together, basically they never had an instance where somebody had an NDE that they could remember, in which they were actually in one of the rooms where they had those code generators set up. So
right.
unfortunately, it seems like that hasn't worked out yet, but that's an intriguing experiment. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
The idea is, you already described the idea, like why that makes sense to try that out.
Well, because if
Like you said, yeah.
if your soul or whatever it is leaves the body and goes up in the ceiling and is looking down. But see, the thing is I feel like if I died and my soul went up to the ceiling, I think I would be looking down at me, not at numbers in a light fixture.
Yeah, but I think they tried to make it, bright numbers and attention
Mhm.
catching kind of thing. And it's probably not like a 20-digit number. It's probably like, even if you do 3 digits, like the
Right.
chance of somebody, mentioning, if they didn't even know that was there, and mentioning, when they remember, it's like, oh, I randomly saw 3 numbers. These are the correct numbers.
Yeah.
It's basically nil possibility by chance.
It's almost like unintentional remote viewing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that's, when people talk about remote viewing, I mean,
Mhm.
that's sort of what they're doing, I leave my body and I can look down but they're talking about they can go.
Yeah, well, so exactly. So the fascinating thing to me about NDEs is like they almost always describe themselves as being floating up at the ceiling,
Mhm.
and a lot of times like in a corner of the room too. And it's
Mhm.
like you said, if you're a spirit and you can fly all over the place, like you can see, can't you probably see through walls and stuff too? Why are they always?
Like, why do they stop today?
Yeah, exactly.
Get
Yeah.
stuck.
And so my hypothesis, which sort of overlaps with the spirit research we're doing here, is that like, at least when you first come out of your body, you're sort of used to being in your body. And so
Right.
you still obey by like physical laws, even though maybe you don't have to, at least until you sort of figure things out and get more comfortable. Like, yeah, your body just stops you at the ceiling.
Or maybe you don't want to leave your body.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
Mhm.
But then you maybe, why aren't you floating like a foot above your body or like 2 feet above your body? Why are they always right up in the
Yeah.
ceiling?
So a couple of people who registered wrote in about NDEs that they
Cool.
had. One person said, I nearly drowned at around 12 years old. I saw a movie reel of my life flash before me. My 2 sisters and I were rescued by a young woman and we all survived.
Hmm.
So that's kind of the life review happening.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's like you said, that's the term for that kind of episode, life review. So like just sort of
Right.
seeing your life before your eyes.
Yeah,
And sometimes even it involves like seeing certain aspects of your life, isn't it, from like other people's perspective too? It's not always just kind of like memories flashing by of like, oh yeah, I did this and this, did that. It's like, I think sometimes it can involve like seeing things from other people's perspective too.
yeah. I think it's really about the impact that you had on the rest of the world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like you can feel the feelings that how you affected people, like certain decisions and stuff like that.
Yeah. So when I do advanced planning with clients and I run advanced planning workshops, I always tell people, you're going to do a life review at some point, like whether you're alive or whether all evidence suggests that it'll happen after you die. So why not do it when you're alive?
Yeah.
So you can have a chance to,
Sure.
Yeah.
change things.
Yeah. And that's the idea behind NDEs too. It's like, well, almost everybody that has them has this life-changing experience.
Right.
Like, wow.
Right.
Right.
I was reading some stuff and they were talking about just what you said, people that have that experience of an NDE. they'll come back and they'll change professions. You know,
Yeah.
one I was reading a story about a military guy and said, I retired from the military because I can't think of hurting somebody.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. And these people will get into nursing, teaching, and be a profession that is helping people and helping people move along.
Yeah.
So,
And what's interesting though is, you know, like there's, when you think about it, like you just learned that there is an afterlife and like it's loving and everybody's, you know, happy in general. Like you said, like there's a very small minority that have not the best experiences, but vast majority have positive experiences. So some people might be like, oh, you had this experience, like why not just come back down to earth and just start like murdering everybody because everybody's going to happy land anyway, you know? But that's not what happens. Like you become a better person and like, you know, and you start trying to help people more. So it's
you know what I just watched? The movie Ghost.
Oh,
That came out in 1990.
yeah.
That's insane. I remember going to see that in the movie. It was great in the movies, but I hadn't seen it since.
Yeah.
And a lot, it's funny how pretty accurate that stuff is. And you know, when the Patrick Swayze character is trying to figure out how to, you know, psychokinesis, and that guy in the subway is trying to teach him how to do it.
Yeah.
It's pretty right on.
Yeah.
You know,
from our experiences of, you know, what hasn't yet been proven, but yeah, from what we sort of found evidence of so far.
Right. And but you know, they're having these experiences where they're going up and he was watching himself and having a life review and it was pretty thinking, man, and a great movie. It holds up. It's still really good.
Yeah.
Still really good.
So let's read some more. Someone else said,
so are these people that are on the
well, these are people that shared their experiences when they registered. So they're
they
either
maybe-
watching
okay,
us
cool.
live now or they're going to view the recording
Cool, yeah.
afterward. But when you registered, there was a space to share. I was hit by a car and felt that I was viewing the whole accident from above. Ultimately, I sustained only minor injuries, so it was definitely not a near-death experience, but perhaps related somehow. So it was a disassociative experience.
Yes.
Hey, does anybody try something new here in the spirit of science? Anybody that is attending, if anybody would like to talk, if they've had that experience, I think there's a way I can let you participate in this and we could actually hear you.
Cool.
So if you're interested in that, send me a little note in the Q&A saying, hey, Dan, you know, I'm interested and I think I can go over to your name and allow you to talk. So if you're comfortable with that, just send me a little note and we'll see if we can't make it happen. But you have something else you wanted to read?
Well, I have these really sort of incredible shared death experiences that people have related to me, and they said that they gave me permission to share them anonymously.
So these are like, you know, colleagues, friends, like are they people in the profession of?
They're in the end of life field.
Cool.
Yeah. And the subject of shared death experiences sort of organically came up.
Yeah.
And so let's start with this one. My grandmother died in her mid-70s from pancreatic cancer when I was 13 years old. As she neared the end of her life, she asked to die at her home in the country, upstate. So my mom brought me and two of my three sisters to her little country house to help honor my grandmother's wishes. My grandmother suffered greatly at the end, and this was very confusing to me at the time and scary. But on the night following her death, her spirit paid me a farewell visit. Even though I was asleep when it happened, I knew that it wasn't a dream. It felt more like an experience. It was vivid, full of sensory input, and very emotional. I woke up and there was a golden column of light at the foot of my bed in which my grandmother appeared. She was in perfect health again, wearing makeup and a dress suit as if she was going to work. She was glowing with joy and very beautiful, more radiant than I'd ever seen her before in her life. In life. She smiled and told me with light-filled eyes how happy she was and that she loved me very much. I could feel her love surrounding me and her intense joy filling me up head to toe. The following morning, I shared my magical vision of Grandma with my two sisters who were there at the time. To my great surprise, each of them reported having almost exactly the same dreamlike experience. They each described a beautiful, luminous grandma who communicated her happiness, peace, and love, and then said farewell. Even more remarkably, when we talked to our fourth sister on the phone later that day, who was not with them, she had also had the same dream.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, not all that unique of an experience, that's, you hear that same story essentially many, many times.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's just, you ask people. I mean, I was on a cruise recently and started talking
went on a
about my
cruise?
research. Yeah, you knew that several months ago.
I
didn't
forgot,
know.
you're like the last person I would ever
No,
think would go on
Yeah,
a
no,
cruise.
the whole reasoning is,
What was it, like a Royal Caribbean?
it was because of my wife's parents needed to come along too, so
Okay.
they can't walk around that well and all that. So, but yeah, it was actually kind of fun. Anyway, I started talking to some people just randomly that sat down and talked about my research, and yeah, like right away he started telling me this crazy story of essentially the same thing.
Mhm.
Flying in through a window, luminous light, found out that his relative had just passed away in a not the best way, and yeah, so almost so many people, you just ask them, you get to that point, they're
Everybody's
like,
got a
they have
story.
Yeah.
Everybody. I was at I think I told this, I was at a birthday, I crashed a birthday party. I got invited by accident. And I
Mhm.
said, screw it, I'm gonna go. And I went and made up a story who I knew. But as somebody would start asking too many questions and my cover was gonna be blown, I would just bring up the ghost stuff.
Yeah,
And everybody had a story.
Yeah.
Everybody
Mhm.
had a story. It's remarkable.
yeah,
Mhm.
and sometimes they'll say like, I haven't told anybody this, or yeah.
Yeah,
it's really
yeah,
cool.
people feel very strange about
Yeah.
sharing it sometimes because they don't want to
Because
be.
people say they're crazy, whatever.
Yeah.
So along those lines, like, we can get into like, how these have been verified in some way, and like what goes past like the idea that these are just hallucinations, right? It's like,
Mhm, mhm.
do you guys know examples off the top of your head, ways that similar to the whatever the reincarnation stories, like that, the way they've been verified? Have you heard like
Yeah,
ways in which NDEs have also been verified?
Well, I mean, I think, is it that someone has one of these experiences, tells another person, and then they later find out that someone died right at that moment that they had that experience, or?
That's one way, yeah, absolutely, exactly, yeah, like, exactly, like, you don't even know, you see some luminous light, whatever, somebody talks to you, you get a phone call or whatever, and then, yeah, right afterwards, you learn that the person passed away. That's one way.
And near-death experiences, if I'm being perfectly honest, I haven't done a lot of research into near-death experiences, shared death experiences. It wasn't something, I don't want to say I wasn't interested in it, but I had bigger interests in other areas and survivalism and that. So, but it's what I did learn about NDEs is that they're all very similar. They have the same sort of theme, but culturally they change. Where here in America,
Mhm, mhm.
we always hear the story going through a tunnel and seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. And in Japan and in the Asian culture, people have a vision of going over a bridge,
Mm.
and there's
Is
a
that
light on the other side of the
true?
bridge.
I
It
actually
is
thought,
true.
yeah,
Mhm.
okay, I actually thought there was like that, the light tunnel was pretty common across all countries, but maybe not.
Yeah.
So another way in which they've sort of been verified is actually, like there was one instance of, there was a family and they were in a car accident and they actually had to be taken to different hospitals. I think maybe, I don't know, they were full at one or one was closer and there was a certain treatment needed, whatever. And one of the ladies at one of the hospitals, she had a near-death experience and she woke up and she was really distressed. She told the doctor, she described it, and then she said, oh, I saw my daughter there, and they realized that the daughter had passed away at the other hospital.
Mhm.
Other times they'll see somebody that they don't even know, and they'll talk to family members and be like, oh, like we never told you about this, but you had a brother that passed away, before you were 3 years old, so you don't remember, or whatever, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Where they actually see people that they didn't know were dead or just didn't even know, period, and learn later that they passed away. So yeah, I mean, as far as you can go in terms of actually verifying these past, like, oh, it's just a hallucination, that's one way. And then the other way is actually shared death experiences.
Mhm.
So not
Well, that's like this with the dreams among the sisters.
Sort of. So
Grandma.
actually, there's another form of that, which is actually happens more often when instead of you just being at home or whatever and seeing this thing, when you're actually standing in the room next to the bed of the person that's passing away and usually touching them, and then literally as the person is passing away, you see yourself, you have this vision of yourself flying up with them, basically like hand in hand. You're both flying up through the tunnel, and you both have you see life reviews, etc. But then it's just right before getting into the light, the person that's actually passed away says like, no, sorry, like you can't.
It's not
You can't
you.
come, even though they essentially want to go because it's so beautiful and it feels so amazing.
Yeah.
But they get forced back and then they pop back into the body. So that kind of helps get rid of the, it's a mental, it's your brain shutting down. It's all kinds of chemical problems because
Right.
like your lack of oxygen, all that kind of stuff, because it's somebody that's yeah. So that's a shared death experience, not a near death experience. It's when somebody else is actually passed away.
Right. So what's the scientific view on, I mean, are they?
People just most of it is just ignoring that, and then like if somebody that's wants to be a real skeptic wants to come up with an explanation, they'd say it's like mass psychosis, where it's like you're having a shared
Right, aphalia do.
it's just kind of like multiple people all having the same hallucination for some reason, which there is no real great explanation for, but for some reason sort of.
Do we think that really happens though?
We don't know how that would happen, but skeptics would say it's more likely that we'll figure out a brain mechanism by which that can happen than it's likely that there is a God in the tunnel and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, here's something that I came across. It says at the University of Kentucky, a neurologist, Kevin Nelson, who, like Grayson, has spent years recording NDEs as a kind of academic side gig, thinks of the experiences as a blending of two states of consciousness, wakefulness and REM sleep, REM sleep, during a time of great physical or emotional danger, and argues that many NDEs are dreamlike, existing in a neurological borderland, fainting he added might bring about the same experiences. Other researchers, including the late neurologist Oliver Sacks, have thought NDEs as extremely complex hallucinations, an idea that, if nothing else, seems culturally accepted.
So the thing is, almost all aspects of NDEs, there are equivalents that can be explained through known scientific, like means and physics and stuff like that.
Okay.
But it's when you put all of them together and you include these things of like, knowing somebody had passed away, or like seeing somebody that you didn't even know existed that turns out to be a relative that passed away, that kind of stuff. That's stuff that can't be explained by that, but almost everything else can be. And so, for instance, like there actually was recently in 2019, there was a study that looked at people that had near-death experiences, and they looked into whether they were prone to something called REM intrusion, which is kind of along the lines of what you were talking about, Dan. And in REM intrusion is when it's kind of like when during a wakeful state, sometimes you'll have, rapid eye. And by the way, everybody, as you may probably know, REM stands for rapid eye movements. So REM intrusion means like you'll sort of might have that even in a wakeful state. And so they found that there was actually a high correlation between people that are prone to REM intrusion and have had NDEs. So, all that necessarily means is that at least, some people that have NDEs, maybe it is a hallucination. And like, I wouldn't be surprised, like, why wouldn't it be? People have hallucinations that are legit hallucinations, but doesn't mean that all of them are. There's always an overlap, and it has to do with that. That's the way, our spirit research works too. It's like there's multiple things that can cause certain things, and sometimes it's one thing, and sometimes it might be another. It's not mutually exclusive. There's another sort of way that has been explained by science that something that's similar to what people experience is it's actually a really intriguing experience. So they did an experiment where they wanted to cause an out-of-body experience in a laboratory. So they got people to sit in a chair and they, in their hand, they're holding a basically a paintbrush type thing, and that paintbrush is being tracked by either a camera system or like a robotic system that's connected to whatever. It's being tracked. It's in 3D space. And so behind the person that's sitting in the chair, there's actually a robot arm that's got a little paintbrush thing too.
Uh-huh.
And in front of the person is a mannequin. And so they're touching this mannequin in like different places on the back with this little paintbrush. And at the same time, the robot arm is copying their movements. So it's touching them on the back at the exact same place at the exact same time.
Mhm.
And so that actually creates this kind of like out of body experience
Oh,
where
yeah.
you feel like you're touching yourself on the back, you know, and you're actually outside of your body.
Uh-huh.
So it creates this pretty cool, you know, illusion that, again, that's one aspect of NDEs. It's not all aspects. So there definitely are ways that we can explain some of these aspects. It's not all of them. And it's kind of fun. You know, it would be kind of fun to try that out, actually.
Yeah, I know, that does sound like fun.
Yeah.
I would do it.
Yeah. And then there also are particular areas of the brain that if you electrically stimulate them, they can cause some similar things of like, you know, body dysmorphia. You feel your body like stretching or contracting, and you might feel like you're floating a little bit above it and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But again, not perfectly matching NDEs, but along the same lines.
Mhm.
Have you guys ever had an out-of-body experience?
No.
No.
Anybody out there? Anybody out there have an out-of-body experience?
Not related
No.
to the use of psychedelics,
Ah.
right? I mean, that's got to be like the.
No. I mean, that would, you know, to induce something, what's the difference?
Yeah.
You know, with having a robot
Yeah.
touch you on the back,
Yeah, well,
or
I guess that's true.
Yeah.
you know, using it's like a mushroom. It starts
Yeah.
with a P, the drug that's in the mushroom.
Psilocybin.
Thank you. You know about this.
I do.
Oh,
There's a
okay.
lot of research on psilocybin and at the end of life,
Yeah.
actually.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. NYU is doing a huge, Dr. Anthony Bossis up at NYU is doing a huge study over a number of years with cancer patients using guided psilocybin trips to
Mhm.
alleviate death fear, end of
Oh, wow.
life fear.
Cool.
And there's really, really good data that people find it very helpful.
Nice.
Mhm.
That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it's been around for centuries. I mean, people have been doing that for centuries.
Mhm.
You know, there's got to be something to it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And now ketamine therapy is becoming very mainstream.
Yeah, although with that, they keep it at a dose that's like sub-hallucinogenic, but this one, they're deliberately
So some
inducing
people have disassociated experiences.
Yeah. It's just not like intended.
There are places in the city where you can go and they'll
Yeah.
do it for you.
Yeah.
You sit there and I know I thought about.
Why not?
Yeah, I think that would be cool.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I could do a field trip.
Mhm.
I've known people that have done it. Yeah.
I know people that microdose.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They love it, but that's not, I can't work.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would anyway.
Yeah.
Anybody out there, we've got Holly Hughes wants us to
Microdose.
talk about Merchant's House experience.
Oh, an NDE here? or-
Yeah, no, I don't think we've got
Oh.
any here, but
Holly has had an experience here?
no. She just wants us to talk about what's going on at the Merchant's House.
Oh,
But
okay.
we'll do that at another time. Maybe if we have time later on, I'll play some EVP that we've got here.
Although we can show a preview of something we're working on
Yeah.
for the public. Which
Yeah. And you know, if people wanted to come, because I think you're gearing up for.
Yeah, we'll see. We're testing out the idea, and
Right.
we'll see, you know, if it works for the museum. But you guys mentioned earlier Raymond Moody, who
Mhm,
coined this
mhm.
term. So Raymond Moody also coined the term, I think he coined it, psychomantia, which
Mhm,
is like
mhm.
looking into a mirror, and so there's the big mirror behind you, and that's one that we're looking into possibly utilizing in the future at the Merchant's House and open to the public. You know, looking into testing it out. So basically, it's mirror gazing, and that's one of the things we're working on at the Merchant's House. But we can stick with NDEs.
Yeah, no, but I mean, you know, what
Put all those.
mirror gazing, what it would be, it's almost, well, I just did it before we started the show.
Yeah.
And the mirror gazing is with some brown noise, headphones to block out anything you might hear, and you're staring into a mirror. And ideally, like a psychomantium is an enclosed chamber with all the ones that I've seen. With a mirror on an end and a light, and I've been in some where they have a little bowl of water.
And a crystal ball sometimes.
sometimes, right? And
I think that's just for effect.
yeah,
though.
yeah.
Yeah.
The water, they had the water for, they gave me some reason, but the light is good. You need to be able to see. But they would have a mirror in the front and a mirror behind, so you would get that sort of infinity
which is
look,
exactly
which is
what
what we have exactly here. And it was really, really interesting. It didn't, nothing happened for me, but it was, and I think I was looking at it as like an investigator going, okay, and I'm looking for reasons why I might be
exactly
having
that's,
a feeling.
that's the exact opposite.
Yeah,
wrong
you-
state of
how you
mind
should
that
be
you're
doing
supposed
it,
to be in.
right,
Yeah,
right.
exactly, yeah. Yeah.
When you did it tonight, you mean, here?
When I did it tonight, I had a lot of stuff going on before I got
Exactly,
here,
it
so
was
I was
rushing
pretty
everything.
distracted
Mhm.
and
And you didn't even know you were gonna do
getting-
it.
right,
you
getting
weren't
ready for the
emotionally
show
prepared.
and something like that would be cool to do on a psychedelic and
Yeah.
see what-
Yeah. So, yeah, but even without the psychedelics, we've tested out several people and they've had some really cool experiences with
Mhm.
this particular mirror that's right behind you. I mean, we've seen black, darker clouds moving through the room, even though the room is very dark, but always associated with positive experiences, positive emotions, which is really interesting. Never been any fear by anybody. So it's really, really cool. And sort of, pleasantly surprised by
Mhm.
wow, really? Like we can have people. And so we have a whole paradigm of entering into a calm state, sort of borderline hypnagogic state before doing the mirror gazing, using some technology that we have, and then you stare in the mirror afterwards. And I've been pretty impressed with the breadth of experiences that people have had.
Yeah, I mean, I want to try it when it's.
Yeah,
I come
we
in,
rushed it. I ran in, we were sweating, it was hot
Yeah.
here and everything. Yeah,
It's hot in New
like you
York right
need at least ideally like a good hour, like half an hour for sort of the calming part, and then half an hour to do the mirror gazing, have the lights dimmer.
Yeah.
Previous several people have had the lights actually totally off in the room, and yet they were still able to see things. So,
Right.
yeah. Anyway, cool experience that we're working on it, and message to the museum if you're interested in it, so that we can sort of gauge your interest.
Yeah, please.
Mhm. Yeah. Should I read another
Yeah,
shared
yeah,
death
yeah.
experience?
Yeah.
Okay. I was in a beautiful place. This is in a dream. Realizing in the dream that I felt totally safe, loved, and at peace while marveling at the beauty of the stars. Out of the sky came a white ball of light that I can only describe as an angry comet/wolf, and it shot through me from the back. The impact propelled me into a sitting position in the bed with a gasp that woke my husband. He asked me what that was about, and I related the dream, after which I laid back down. Now I was feeling an unearthly deep peace, and even though I'm not into dream interpretation, it was such an unusual form of peace, from high anxiety back down to deep, deep peace, that I asked, what could this mean? The answer came immediately, almost like a voice. Don't take anything for granted. Things can change in a heartbeat. I fell back asleep. At 5 a.m., the phone rang. It was the police from my hometown, and they told me that my brother had just died.
Yeah, there you go. And we mentioned exactly that
Mhm.
phenomenon before. Yeah. And the thing is with these stories too, it's like, the chance of somebody making that up, like really,
Right.
it's much lower than for other types of like, oh, I saw some UFO flying around. It's like, this is a very personal experience, like family member passing away, like, that's part of what actually got me into this research to begin with. A friend telling me essentially that exact same story with one of their relatives. And it's just like, wow.
And these stories have been around since the
Yeah.
dawn of time. I mean, the
Yeah.
stuff I was reading today, Plato writes about Socrates having a near-death experience and out-of-body experiences, and Indians, American Indians have all of that is just built into their culture.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, the Greeks were really into playing with the mind. I mean, the psychomantium
It's based
originated
off-
with
yep.
the Greeks.
Yeah. So that's actually based off of the general technique is called scrying, and that's kind of looking into reflective surfaces, including orbs, etc., and seeing sort of having visions. And so the thought is that in ancient Greece they had that the oracle cave,
Right.
and they had like a pool of water, and that's the reflective surface that people look into and see interesting things.
Mhm.
That's actually apparently what Moody based the idea of the psychomantium off of. Yeah, I mean, exactly. These experiences have been happening forever. So, along the lines of how do we prove them? People at UVA, et cetera, they're all kind of trying to do it through interviews, which is super intriguing, and it definitely helps you like realize, wow, there may be something there, but it never really definitively proves it in like a scientific experiment type way.
Right.
So that's actually along the lines of part of why we're trying this psychomantium stuff here, because if these are truly real things that you're seeing in the mirror that are happening physically around you, then if we put sensors around you while you're having that experience, then maybe it's a way that we can sort of induce that experience instead of these sort of random experiences or associated with random events experiences. And having that way, because you can induce it, you can have sensors around at the same time.
Right.
So it's kind of, trying to, any data that we get from this experiment will sort of tie into possible evidence for NDEs being validated as well.
What's the medical view though on what potentially in the brain might be causing?
So yeah,
some of that
lack
too.
of oxygen was one thought, and so if I remember correctly though, all those explanations actually, like, they were sort of just tossed out there initially, by skeptics saying like, oh, it's probably just lack of oxygen, you're dying, whatever. But when people have actually done research into it, and as far as I remember, last time I looked into this, it's actually the opposite. Like, your neurons actually start firing. There is a point at which they can start bursting during the final time of death, but during the times at which people say these experiences happen, it doesn't correlate very well. So those types of explanations, as far as I understand it, aren't very good from that perspective.
Yeah, here's just a quick little paragraph along those lines, and this Bruce Grayson published a book called After in 2020, 2021, I think. And this interviewer asked him, so when I asked Grayson why he decided to publish After after all these years, he explains that, are those readers?
Yeah.
Your regular glasses? You mind?
Yeah.
I can't see.
Look good.
Fetching.
Yeah, thank you. When I asked Grayson, it's hard to believe I had a date stand me up yesterday.
Oh.
I can't
Maybe
understand.
you
I
have
can't
the
understand
glasses. Maybe you
why.
have the glasses.
She probably saw you. She's like, he doesn't have glasses.
I can't understand why. Friday night, I'm talking about ghosts. When I asked Grayson why he decided to publish after all these years, he explains that we had to wait until we had enough knowledge about near-death experiences to be able to understand what was going on, by which he means not that we know what NDEs are, but that advances in science have allowed us to rule out a heap of things that they are not. They are not physiological hypotheses that seem plausible theoretically, he says, but none have stuck. Are feel-good chemicals like endorphins released into the body at the point of peril creating euphoria? Does the brain become starved of oxygen, prompting real seeming fantasies? Do various areas of the brain suddenly begin to work in concert to create strange altered states? Nobody knows for sure. We keep thinking, oh, it's got to be this, Grayson says. No, the data doesn't show that. Oh, then this. Well, nope, the data doesn't show that either. So it's
exactly.
Experiments
Experiments have actually been done testing those theories, and they're not playing out.
Right.
But they were valid, reasonable theories to begin with, but yeah, actual testing seems to not.
What is it about us where we need to know how? When we're just talking about Indians that just kind of American Indians just kind of took it on faith, and they didn't say, well, let's figure out how this happens.
Yeah, well, because I think the how is answers the question of, is it real or is it just all in your mind? If the how is, oh, a spirit literally came down and said hi, then like, okay, there's an afterlife. That's pretty cool. If the how is like some chemicals went around in your brain, then it's like, okay, you're just crazy. So.
Yeah, I mean, and we just make sense of the world in a different way. I mean, ancient peoples or peoples of certain cultures and religions don't have, they create explanations that make sense to them, so they don't need to look any further. Like the rain gods, like they pray to the rain gods and then it rains. So then they think that they are able to summon the rain gods when they want to. We're more rational. We're a more secular society, so we don't take those leaps of faith.
Well, the how is useful in that case too, right? If the how is that the rain god doesn't help, then you're saving some time and energy. And
yeah,
and I'm not saying that's necessarily the case. I'm just saying that's why understanding the mechanism can be helpful. Yeah, and yeah, I don't know if we're, yeah, I don't know. I was gonna say, I don't know if we're more rational. It's just, yeah, it's a good question.
I also think they were a lot busier than we are. We have a lot of leisure time.
Sure,
No, we have a lot of
yeah,
leisure
it's
time,
absolutely
right?
true.
I mean, they didn't really have time to, like, a
Absolutely.
lot of this is
They're
navel
hunting and
gazing.
gathering and
Yeah,
making
no, a lot of this
moccasins
is navel gazing. Like, why do we need to know why for everything? It's because we're just not that
We
busy.
need something
Right.
to do.
Yeah.
But it just seems, sometimes I'm walking around and I'll see somebody who doesn't seem to have a care in the world and isn't looking to say, why do people have NDEs and
Mhm.
do ghost spirits exist? They're just walking around doing a thing and I get envious. I'm like, I wish I could be like that,
Mhm.
rather than, it just seems to be a happier, more pleasant existence to just go, you know what? When this is done, I'm gonna go to a better place.
It can
Well,
absolutely.
they
be
have
that.
full
It's-
faith, they have full
Yeah.
faith in that. For whatever reason, they were raised with a strong faith, or maybe they just are inherently people of faith.
Right.
Or they just don't give a crap. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but
No, but like, not, I know what you mean, not in a bad
Yeah,
way,
in a good
but
way. Yeah,
like,
yeah,
all
just
right, I'm just
whatever.
gonna, yeah. My dad was kind of like that.
roll with things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but there are inquisitive people and there are not inquisitive people. I mean, Ben Franklin was an inquisitive person, and that's
thank
how,
God.
and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
how we know so many
Thank God.
things about, yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Different things work for different people, and that's not necessarily like you're born a certain way. Like people can change too. Like you can have a near-death experience and all of a sudden, you don't care, or maybe you care more and you want to learn more about it, or whatever. People
Yeah.
change too, and it's different strokes for different folks.
Also, people congregate together, so like we're all inquisitive people, so we feel like there are so many inquisitive people, but
Yeah.
for people who are less
That's
inquisitive,
true. Yeah.
they probably socialize with less inquisitive people, and
Yeah.
for them, that's the norm.
Well,
Right.
that's something that actually always absolutely blows my mind. It's like you when you start talking to people, like I said, and they tell you this experience. In my mind, I'm like, how did you not?
Yeah, why did you just let that go?
Yeah,
Yeah,
are
yeah.
you in, like, what? Really?
Yeah.
Like you had this amazing experience of like that proves physics is wrong or whatever. And, like you didn't like dig deeper into this. Like that's
Well, maybe they
amazing.
were scared.
No,
And a lot
I
of
think
people,
part of it is just like a majority of the people they might mention it to will say like, oh, that's just something weird, or like you're crazy.
Mhm.
And then, or it's just like they realize it doesn't fit in with their mental model of the world. And so you just discard it. Like it's almost like it never happens. Like you just delete it and it's like, oh, this doesn't fit in, probably never happened. Like, even though all the, it's like when you wake up from a dream, like unless you write it down right away and you like and you can
gone.
look back at it, it's so easy to like a week later just be like, that probably
Yeah.
didn't never happen.
It wasn't significant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people who have had NDEs report not wanting to come back. Like there's
Yeah,
a moment
yeah.
where they're told you have to go back,
Yeah.
or you're not ready yet, and they don't want to.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredibly powerful. And one, like you mentioned too, like people mentioned like a brilliant light, etc. One thing that's pretty common is not just brilliant light, but brilliant everything. Like all the colors, everything are just much more. They just say it's more beautiful than like, any colors they've ever seen. They might be in a field or whatever too. Same thing. It's just like the most beautiful valley, like the colors, everything super vibrant. And
There's a Robin Williams movie. And I don't know the name of it. I didn't see it.
the one where he pretends to be a maid, or
Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah.
Mrs. Doubtfire's NDE.
Yeah, Mrs. Doubtfire. Well, we can't watch that now because no drag.
Oh, that's
like,
right.
Mrs.
Yeah.
Doubtfire and
Mhm.
Klinger and all that.
VHS
Apparently
tapes.
they're
Yeah.
destroying us and grooming us to read stories to children. But there's this movie where I don't know if he passes away and goes over, or if it's a near-death experience, but a friend of mine said, you've got to see this. Of course, I didn't see it, but I read about it and people were saying it's the most accurate
Yeah.
depiction of what I experienced, people that have had that experience going.
Yeah.
But everything was like Wonka-ized. It was
Yeah.
everything in the field was the yellow, were the most brilliant yellows you ever saw. And the way they did it in the film, I saw pictures of it while I was reading about it, it was like a cartoon almost.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I guess this character just was like, you know what, I'm gonna stay because this is
Yeah.
where I belong.
So you know, I haven't dug that deep into it, but that particular aspect is fascinating to me because actually there's other things that people describe seeing too sometimes when they have the shared death experience, when they're standing next to somebody with a hand on them, they're passing away and they fly through the tunnel. So before that happens, a lot of times they actually describe being like a bubble, like a warp bubble forming around them, and they see everything around them kind of like start rippling, and then they kind of go into this tunnel. So that's something that several people have described with the shared death experience. And so that, along with the vibrant colors, you know, that becomes fascinating because now it's like, okay, these are common things that seem to be happening, visual things, and like maybe we can relate that to the physical phenomena that are allowing these things to actually happen, right? So like with that shimmering, you know, surroundings, like maybe that's some kind of change in the, you know, the atmospheric characteristics, being able to see certain lights very vividly. Maybe that's an effect of like, you know, certain wavelengths are becoming perceptible to you, or that, and those certain wavelengths might be associated with spirit phenomena, etc. You know, right now it's all like hand waving, but like, you know, you should look into the anytime you see those commonalities of like sensory experiences. Yeah, there might actually be something interesting of like, oh, it might be hints of the physical mechanism surrounding those kinds of experiences.
Right. And that we have somebody, Aspen.
Oh, yes, Aspen.
Aspen.
Hey,
All right,
Aspen.
Aspen's been great.
One of my students.
I'm going to has Matilda as a teacher. Is she nice? Is she mean? I'm going to share something that she wrote. I'm sure that's fine because I opened up the chat for everybody can see what she wrote. But the how focus is due to our culture being based on materialist assumptions that we have to see, touch, and feel in order to believe that something is real. Other cultures value the intuitive experience as being valid, or more so than our sensory-based validation. And then she told me that this movie is called What Dreams May Come.
Oh.
And it's an amazing movie, all caps.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go home and see if I can't find it.
Yeah.
And
I've never even heard
she
that.
said Matilda is awesome.
Thank
And
you.
I agree with you, Aspen. She is awesome. Matilda and I had a nice talk before we got going today. She made me feel really good. No. All right, so listen, we got 5 minutes.
Okay.
What do we want to talk about?
Well, I have another,
All
All right.
okay.
I love Lee. I like watching you.
I love Lee's giggle.
Yeah. Yeah, Lee's the
Okay.
coolest.
I woke up fully awake very abruptly in the middle of the night and saw off to the upper right of me the image of the police shooting practice target, an outline, right, target,
Huh.
and then bullet holes being shot through various parts of a human form. Suddenly, a brilliant white light bloomed behind the image, and shafts of light came through each bullet hole. Then the light became overwhelmingly bright and luminous, completely flooding the entire image with light. I somehow immediately understood that my friend TC had passed at that very moment. I knew he had been in the final stages of long-standing metastasizing colon cancer, but I had not had any contact with him for a couple of months. Right after the light disappeared and I sat in the darkness, I heard, knew, and understood an inner voice that said, the bullet holes were all the places where the cancer had spread, and see how I was completely healed, and now I am whole in the light. The next morning, I got a message from my mother that TC had died the day before. That day.
I wonder
Yeah.
in her consciousness, what made it bullet holes and not
That's what I was gonna
Spot,
say. It's
you
not
know?
necessarily her consciousness. From like the voice said, like the bullet holes represent blah blah blah. So like it almost sounds like the person passing away can choose like how they represent their
Yeah.
passing away, and that's kind of awesome. Like
Yeah.
you could do like a drag, you know, you can like, you know, I wonder like the extent to which you can do like a cool show or something, you know. I mean, that's like
Yeah.
pretty. I've never heard that kind of vision before. Like before, it kind of sounds like, you know, my grandma showed up in a light. It kind of sounds like, oh, that's just kind of the way things naturally happen when you're spirit to glow or whatever. But like this makes it sound like you can actually put on a little bit of a show, whatever you
Right.
want, you know.
Well, yeah, and
What would you use?
Yeah, I don't know.
What would you use?
Yeah. I don't know, thunderbolts or something cool. Yeah, I don't know.
I like the holes being enveloped by the light, and like maybe the holes are representative of the cancer.
Yeah,
throughout
exactly.
the
Yeah,
body.
that's what I.
And then
I got that, yeah.
the healing experience
Yeah.
when he finally died.
I was wondering, like, I wonder if this person who is having that perception is like a police officer
Yeah,
or
yeah,
somebody in
exactly.
the military where
That's a good question.
they,
Yeah.
you know, see a silhouette.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, that's a very specific
Yeah,
something that the average person never deals with their
Yeah.
entire life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
and that's actually what makes it really intriguing. And that's a good question. And so basically, like, let's say we find out the answer to that question, right? And the answer is, oh, the person that saw that vision is not a police officer, but the friend that passed away was. Like, that lends evidence to, like, oh, the person that's passing away is able to create the image that they want, you know? Or if it's vice versa, then maybe it's, you know, like you said, like
Right.
the person seeing the vision is interpreting it in a way that's familiar to them.
Well, I can verify that this person is not a police officer.
Okay.
But yeah, I wonder about the person that passed away. Like,
Mhm.
maybe they
TC.
were.
And I have a sister named
So
Bossis.
that's intriguing. Yeah, like that's pretty cool. Like that, it's sort of a little tiny tidbit of evidence
Right,
suggesting
like-
like that you have power over how you can display them.
My favorite
Yeah.
medium that I work with, Richard, he, Richard, you spoke about
Yeah.
Richard. He tells me that when he sees a spirit, they do things for him that he interprets, lets him interpret what their connection is with the person he's doing a reading for.
Mhm.
And he said, so like, if it was a family member, the person would kiss the not the reader, but the transmitter. They would kiss them on the cheek. And that's how we knew, okay, it's an older woman,
Mhm.
she kissed you on the cheek, so I think it maybe as a grandmother or if your mom is in spirit.
Hmm.
So they would do these little things that his brain would interpret,
Mhm.
Yeah.
going, all right, that's a family member, or that's this.
Yeah.
It was interesting. So it takes two.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah, like everything is probably a combination.
Oh, we have a, let's see, somebody sent us a question. Is there any information about dreams of loved ones who have passed, inviting you to join them somewhere? Would this simply be attributed to lingering connection with that person or something with other significance? All the things that I've heard about when people are having a near-death experience is a significant person on the other side or a family member telling them not to come. Like, it's
It's
not
not
your
your
time.
time.
Yeah.
Although,
Not yet.
yeah, I mean, my wife had experiences like that as a kid, and she described them to her mother, and her mother said, you know, made her actually after that is when she sort of stopped, tried to deliberately turn off her sort of openness and connection to you know, spirits and stuff like that, because her mother was freaking out. She's like, oh my God, like, I'm not gonna let you, you know, sleep in your own bed for the next week or whatever. Don't go outside. She didn't want her to get hit by a car or whatever. So
Wow.
like, yeah, because she was scared that the person was kind of suggesting that whatever she was gonna pass away from.
Oh, so she would
had
say, a
experience-
family member, come with me to
Exactly.
the other side.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. She had like a dream like that or something. Yeah. And it
Wow.
happens at least once, maybe twice, and both times her mother's like, okay, you're not leaving that for a week. Like, you're gonna stay totally safe. Like,
I did an investigation out on Long Island where a little boy got a call. He's like, such cool people, the mom and dad. He's like, I just need somebody to come out and let me know if my kid is nuts or not. He said, but he's seeing somebody he calls the swirly man,
yeah,
and they want him to kill his mother.
yeah.
Whoa, okay.
So
All
with
He
right.
goes, my wife's freaking out because that's all the kid talks about is
Yeah.
how the
I can
swirly man
understand.
wants me to stab you when you're sleeping.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
with child psychologists, that's actually, so like, is my child seeing spirits, seeing ghosts, is like a pretty common question that's asked after the first like 1 or 2 visits, when like they've kind of, you know, gotten to know them better and stuff like that. But like, it's not the first like calling them up like, hey, I want to schedule an appointment. Like, is my kid seeing ghosts? But once they talk to child psychologists for a bit, that's actually a pretty common question, because stuff like that, it's like, wow, like, you know, what's the other explanation behind that?
Yeah.
Like, the kid's just a total crazy. And a lot of that's the thing though. So children having those types of visions, even imaginary companions, etc., they've done long-term studies and they found that that's not correlated with long-term future psychosis or anything like that. In
Mhm.
fact, the opposite. A lot of times they grow up to be more mentally healthy than the general population. So more socially adept, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's not, that kid's probably gonna go up to be,
Yeah, I
fine,
stayed in
normal person.
contact with these people for a few years, and the kid,
Probably doesn't even remember, right?
yeah, he was
Yeah.
fine. He was very, very young when we went out there. It was strange too. We came in the house and he came right up to me and grabbed my hand and he thought I was a cop.
Yeah.
And so the dad said, what are we gonna do? We went to the little boy's room. And I think the swirly man, his nightlight spun. So I think that was the swirly
Oh.
man.
Huh.
So his dad and I kind of concocted this scenario where I was going to arrest the swirly man.
Nice.
And I arrested him. You have the right to remain silent. We did the whole thing.
Unplugged the nightlight, took it with you.
And yeah, well, he took the shade that
Yeah.
spun off, and we didn't let him see it, the little
Yeah.
boy. So the
Yeah.
swirly man, he wasn't going to see anything swirling in his room,
Yeah.
and it worked.
Mhm.
Oh, nice.
So,
Yeah.
that was a young O.J. Simpson.
No.
Hey, well, listen, 7:33. I think we did a whole hour.
Yeah, this was a great show.
Yeah, and everybody hung in there. We had the same amount of people.
Mhm.
And so thanks for sticking in there, guys. And again, now that we're, calmed down more, we can talk about this, the evil developers who are wanting to destroy the merchant's house. So
Swirly man.
pardon me?
Swirly men.
They are the swirly men next door. So we just ask everybody that's with us tonight, and if spread the word, bring a friend, come to the merchant's house, take a tour, take a ghost tour, maybe do some mirror gazing at some point, who knows, but come in and help support the house, help support the people that are supporting the house, the staff that work here, all the volunteers and our friends on the board. Help them keep this house going, because it's really, really important, not just to the people that are involved with the house, but I think it's important for the city, for New York City.
Mhm.
I think it's important for history. I think it's one of the more important things that we can do is not forget about the past, enjoy the past, and help us, make the future better by learning from the past. And what a great place to come in and learn than the merchant's house. Everything here is original to the house. So, we're looking at chairs back there and a piano. This stuff was all in the house in the 1860s.
Curtains,
The
yeah.
curtains, not us, but this gasolier, that was here in, the mid 1800s.
Yeah.
And you guys can come down here and take a look at all this
Yeah.
stuff. It's amazing.
And
So,
aside from just, looking at, oh, look, there's a gas here, like the actual details about like how people lived and like, how are fascinating. And they're actually detailed in that book, An Old Merchant's House, but you
Mhm.
also learn from a visit to the house as well.
yeah. So
Yeah.
great. So please come by, and thank you everybody for sticking in with us and hanging in with us, and really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you at the merchant's house. All right. Thanks,
night.
everybody.
Have a great weekend.
Good night, Pi. We love you.
Right.
All right. Bye-bye.